All right, hi everyone. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing about this next week's Bible study. We're finally into chapter 6, and we're moved on to Jesus kind of put a pin in some of the things he was talking about in chapter 5. But chapter 6, of course, is not like utterly different. I mean, it's still on the same idea of like what is true righteousness. But chapter 6 is a little different in that it seems like some of the things that are being talked about here are more like inherently religious practices, so to speak. And the three that are going to be in view today are giving, prayer, and fasting. Okay, um, so that's the focus for today. And you're going to see that the Pharisees do these things, or the hypocrites do these things, or other people do these things. But there's a certain way in which they should be done that involves true worship, true piety, I guess you could say, if you want to be fancy. So first, I just have you looking at 6:1 because that is really 6:1 is like the thesis of the chapter, um, at least um, at least the first half of the chapter. But if you understand this verse, you can understand everything that's going on after it. But if you miss this verse, I feel like the rest of it doesn't make sense. So make sure you understand this verse. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. It's a strong verse. And the idea here is that um, he's asking you, Jesus is saying, don't just do stuff in front of others and to be seen by them in order to be seen by them. The idea that the heart motive that Jesus is attacking here is if you do these religious acts just to be seen by other people and praised by other people, that's not it's not really worship, right? Like because it is about your heart. Remember, that's what this Sermon on the Mount is kind of telling us. Um, if your heart is to gain worship from others, you're not really worshiping God. You're not really desiring righteousness. You're desiring that other people see you as righteous rather than actually wanting God's righteousness for its own sake. Um, Usually, if you're acting this way, if this is what you desire, you'll find this great public private divide in your life where your public life looks one way, your private life looks another way. So I have a couple questions there to help you unpack that. Um, so yeah, hopefully that helps understand. And let me know if that doesn't make sense. But it's a really important principle and a deeper principle. This goes beyond just doing the right thing. It's what is your heart's desire? What is your motive? Um, so yeah, okay. So now we'll talk about giving for a few minutes. Giving is addressed in verses 2 to 4, and in verse 2. Sorry, I have a lot of screens up right now. I have to flip back. Um, there's this idea of giving and kind of making a big deal of it, right? And he's saying that's what the hypocrites do. Now, I pause here. Hypocrite comes up a lot in this chapter, but I pause in these verses to say, like, well, what is a hypocrite? And commonly, a hypocrite is someone we say you're a hypocrite, and that means you kind of like do one thing and say another thing, right? You're trying to deceive someone. It's not really who you are, is what you're saying that you do. But I think a stronger definition of a hypocrite, in my mind, that's true. That's not untrue. But I think the flip side of that is more tragic. It says the quote is, "They are not so much deceivers as they are disastrously self-deceived." Right, and so these people think that there's some kind of value in giving and getting praise from other people from that giving. Not only are they hypocrites because their heart does not align with their actions, they're self-deceived. They think there's some value in this. They find great value, great treasure. This chapter, these verses will say, um, right? Is it these verses? Um, it says it somewhere. In verse 1, maybe it says reward, but that's their reward. That's their treasure, so to speak. Talk about treasures in heaven. Um, so the flip of this, I think, is seen in the woman in Mark 12 who gives a little of what she has. She's giving out of the abundance of her heart, um, and that's what makes her offering pleasing to God. That she doesn't have anything really. But what she does have, she wants to give it away. Um, and you see the heart of giving there, the true worshipful heart of giving. So it's an opportunity to consider, okay, as we give of our time and our money and our efforts, in what ways are we tempted to be hypocritical? And thinking about that definition, in what ways are we tempted to just want to find worth in doing these things that make us feel good about ourselves based on how other people see us doing these things, right? So maybe it's like uh, giving of our time because we want to post it on Facebook, or because someone will see us do that, or giving a lot of money because the organization that we're giving to will um, honor us in some way, or something like that. Um, so the question is, how can we give rightly in a way that embodies verses 3 and 4? And I think that the cure to this kind of ailment is giving in secret. And I'm going to skip ahead. The challenge, one of the challenge options for this week is to do something like that, to give anonymously, whether your time and your effort or whatnot. My cat is eating styrofoam behind the camera. Should I stop her? Probably. Here, let me see if I can stop her without stopping the video. Stop it. Got her. I just kicked something in her direction. Don't worry. No animals are harmed in the making of this video. Um, and she didn't choke on styrofoam. Okay, I'm distracted. The next section is prayer. Now we're gonna take verses 5 to 8, which is the principle, and then you have the model in the Lord's Prayer. Okay, so once again, there's a prayer of the hypocrites, and Jesus is saying, once again, the hypocrites are doing these things for human praise, and that's what hypocritical prayer is. It's not about really connecting with God or being with Him or talking to Him or honoring Him. It's about praying so that you get praise from other people, praying so that uh, maybe it's like, well, I have a good spiritual life because I pray. I think that's even a sneaky one there. It's like, well, that's not the point of praying. Just, it's the point of praying is to know a person, God, like we talked about in D groups this past week. It's about desiring that relationship with Him because of who He is, wanting to give Him praise because of who He is, not so that you will be praised. Anyway, I won't harp on that too much, but that's the point. So you know, there's some questions here to unpack that. What does that look like? How should prayer be different? Um, I want to note really quick that the prayer of the babbler, I said in verses 7 or 8, don't keep on babbling, as the NIV says. Um, the problem with their faith is that they think they'll be heard by God because of their many words. And I'm saying, what I'm suggesting is that this indicates a lack of faith on their part. Because look at verse 8: do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need. So we should ask, but we don't need to feel like we need to, uh, uh, like we're not going to be more likely to get what we want because we use fancier words or more or more words or something like that. Um, Really, this is a misunderstanding of the fundamental nature of prayer. Um, and hopefully we understand this from the groups this past week. But um, this, by the way, we'll see this more in the back half of the chapter when we talk about our treasures in heaven and not worrying, and Matthew 6:33 and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, considering what's most convicting to you about this section, then we're going into the model. Matthew 9 through really through 13 is the model, and then 14 to 15 is a commentary on the aspect about forgiveness. Um, I don't know if I want to walk through all this for the sake of time, but um, basically the first half, 9 and 10, has to do with this kind of worship, praising God, and the second half has more to do with asking God. So we're saying, your name is holy. We want your kingdom to come. We want your will to be done. We're magnifying, we're honoring God. We're aligning our hearts with who He is by praising Him. And then we step into saying to our requests. And we should model our prayer that way. When we say, real quick, hallowed be thy name is what the famous old Englishy way of saying it is, probably the way you've memorized, or to keep holy God's name. That means that we want God's name to be known for who He really is. That as we live our lives in the name of God, that our actions align with who God is as much as possible. Like, we want your name to be known, God, rightly throughout the whole earth. That's kind of what that is all about. Um, so I'm not going to walk through this. Let me think. Let's see if there's anything I need to talk about. Doo, 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 doo. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good. I think all those are pretty self-explanatory, but do let me know if you have any questions. I'm skimming here, so let me know. They may not be self-explanatory. Um, I wish we could do a deeper study on the Lord's Prayer, but in an effort to kind of get through the Sermon on the Mount as much as possible, can't do it. So finally, fasting. Um, what is fasting is a good question. Well, simply put, it is a removal of something from your life in order to focus on God or seek Him out in prayer. My most recent serious fast was when Josiah was having surgery. I fasted and prayed. I wanted. I was kind of desperate for God's blessing, and um, I prayed for a really long time, pretty persistently about that. But I was so uneasy about it at the end, even still, that I fasted just so that I could focus in on praying. And I think that was a powerful experience for me. It was. Just to come before God and acknowledge my desperation for Him in fasting was good. So the problem with the hypocrites fasting, here they are again, the hypocrites, is that they're fasting once again, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm so hungry." I don't know what they're doing, but they were. It was all for show. Um, and I think this still happens. This comes up in every section. How does this happen today? How can we fast rightly? Um, and just a couple things like, why do you think it's not practiced today? Maybe it's misunderstood. Maybe it's just not what people want to do. You don't have to fast, of course, but it's a spiritual discipline that we should take advantage of. And so, what are some ways we can fast? Once again, skipping down to the challenges. I copied Cru's fasting guide. I haven't read through the whole thing, but it looks really thorough, and I trust Cru. So, if you want to fast for your challenge this week, there's a guide. I encourage you to read through that. So in conclusion, I have you looking back at Matthew 5:16, which encourages us to shine our light before men. And I want to acknowledge that these two things are not disingenuous, because it's all about the heart. We should be living our lives in the open so that people can see us. We shouldn't be just practicing our Christianity in secret. There is a time and place to do this, of course, as comes out in this passage. But there comes a time when we've got to get out there, and we need to let our lives before others shine the light of God. And so the question is, how do we do both of these things well? Matthew 6:1 and Matthew 5:16. And I really like this next question. That's weird because I wrote it, but what would change about your life if you were to focus on living with an audience of one rather than an audience of many? I think it's something important to think about. I talked about all the challenges already, except for the part about prayer, number two. I'd encourage you to set up some scheduled times of prayer and to use the Lord's Prayer as a model, keyword model. Don't simply repeat the prayer. That's fine, that has value. But I think it's helpful to take that phrase, give us this day our daily bread, and unpack that a little bit. Let's kind of like pray that out, what that means in your own words, and maybe some of the things that you're worried about for that. What is the daily bread that you are looking for from God that's causing you anxiety? Okay, that's all I got. Let me know if you have any questions. Hope quarantine's treating you okay. Talk to you soon.